morning, good afternoon and good evening. My name is Rich Clark. I'm a hypnotherapist and future life progression therapist, and as of Throwback Thursday I've talked about my favourite music albums, I've talked about my favourite TV series, and my future series is going to be about my favourite films. So I'm going to carry on the TV series today, and I'm going to talk about, in this recording I'm going to talk about 5 different series, but on this one, just to start off with, I'm going to talk about a series called Blackadder. Now, Blackadder was a 4-part series, and it was basically written by the same guy called Richard Curtis, who wrote Love Actually. He also wrote 4 Weddings and a Funeral, but this was one of his first things he ever wrote, and he wrote this with Rowan Atkinson. The rest of the series, the first series was written by Rowan Atkinson, the rest of the series were co-written with Benelton, who is a British comedian. So Blackadder is a series of 4 period British sitcoms, plus several instalments, and they all aired from the BBC from 1983 to 1989. So I was born in 1981, so I didn't see the first one, but I saw bits of, I saw them over repeats and so forth. So the main anti-hero is Edmund Blackadder, and Tony Robinson is Blackadder's dog's body, Baldric. Each of these series was set in a different historical period, with the 2 protagonists accompanied by various different characters, though several reappear in one service or another. So it's kind of like they reincarnate into different people. So Melchior is stephenfry, who we know as, who does QI and all the rest of his stuff. And he was to be with George, who was hughlaurie, and then he was also a guy called Tim McAnemy, and he was also a guy who played Lord Percy, Captain Darling. So again, they all had these different roles. So I mentioned about Only Fools and Horses is one of my favourite series, but actually Blackadder's quite high up there. And I think there's only a few, like I said, Father Ted, Only Fools and Horses, but then Blackadder would probably be my 3rd best series, I'd say, as a UK one. And I've got some others to talk about as well today. So each series was set in a different time period of British history. So the first series began in 1485, medieval times, and then the last series, the 4th series, ended in 1917 in the First World War, the Great War. So in each member of each series, Blackadder is a member of the same British family dynasty, and it implies that Blackadder is descendant of the previous one, and then literally they never managed to father children. And Blackadder is not particularly bright, but much intellectual inferior of his servant Baldric. And the thing is with Blackadder, is clever, shrewd, scheming and manipulative, while Baldric is extremely dim. Each incarnation of Blackadder, and Baldric is also saddled with tolerating the presence of dim-witted aristocrats. The first season, this is Lord Percy. hughlaurie plays in the 3rd and 4th season as Prince George, Prince Regent and Lieutenant George, respectively. First season, made in 1983, was Blackadder was set in the fictional reign of Richard IV. The second season, Blackadder II, was during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, who was played by Miranda, I think it's Miranda Richardson, who played Queen Elizabeth. And then Blackadder III was set during the late 18th and early 19th century in the reigns of George III. And Blackadder Goes Forth in 1989 was set in 1917 in the trenches of the Great War. So within this, we had all these different things would happen. So the series 1 of 83 was probably quite interesting because there is Peter Cook, who was King Richard III. There's many people who have actually become big actors in that time, within the 80s and in the 90s. So you have people like Rick Mayall would play some crazy character in it. Most of these all originally had worked in Not the 9 O'Clock News, and they all originally were from either Cambridge or Oxford. I can't remember exactly, so do bear with me. I think they were all originated from Cambridge, I think, and it was all like a comedy thing they'd done in Cambridge and then sort of went into TV. Blackadder 2 is set in England during the Queen Elizabeth, and that is to do with he regularly deals with the Queen, her Lord Chamberlain and Lord Melchior, who's stephenfry, and they rival for the Queen affections. Obviously the Queen, as you know, was Queen Elizabeth I was the Virgin Queen, supposedly. The nanny Nursey, who's quite funny in it as well. And then there's all these different people like Sir Walter Raleigh, and there's like the bishops, and there's all these different people. So again, you always will see these different people, and they reincarnate into different things. So the thing is, it was teaching about history, and to a child like myself, I thought it was quite a funny way of looking at history, because obviously it wasn't accurate, but it was done in a really interesting way. Blackadder III was set in the 18th and 19th century, known as the Regency. So Prince Regent, the Prince of Philip, which is Prince of Wales, which is Hughlaurie, and is a complete idiot. And it's basically Blackadder Edmund is the guy who's trying to always give him, the things to help him out, but also he's trying to set him up so he fails, and so he could take over. In that series, Robbie Coltrane comes in there. Chris Barry, who was probably known as Rimmer in Red Dwarf and the British Empire, he came in. And Nigel Planner, who's obviously, he was in The Young Ones and so forth. And then you had a few others as well coming in that. And I think the Series 4, which is not my favourite, is Blackadder Goes Forth, and that is in the First World War. Probably not my favourite series, but equally as good as the others. And I think it was gladly that it sort of had ended, and they've only done specials after that, because I think it really it lost its edge a little bit. However, there's some great ideas in it, and like I said, there's some pilot episodes, some of the Cavalier years. So some of the things were also done as part of Comic Relief. Christmas Carol, they did a version of Blackadder, and then they obviously did one based in the 2000, which was to do with them kind of going back and forth to different eras. And the last one of actually Blackadder was done in 2020, and that was to do with during the COVID pandemic, they decided to do something. Don't know why. It wasn't very good, to be honest. So again, they've tried to redo them. I don't think they work. I think, to me, they're just the best ones. The best stuff is the series 2 and 3. I think are very good. I think they are, 86 and 87, I think were key points. I think number 1, 83, was okay. It was not bad. It just wasn't very. I don't think it really hit its mark by that time. So, with the idea of Blackadder, I think what it was is like you've got this idea of typical black humour, quite dark humour, but then this idea of like comic silliness, and a lot of it is the tongue-in-cheek, and also the language as well is used is quite funny. So yeah, I highly recommend it. And Rowan Atkinson, obviously, this is all before he did the Mr. Bean. Tony Robinson now he did Time Team, and he was all a bit of a historian now, hardly does much acting. Stephenfry, as you all probably would know quite well. And then just others. Hughlaurie obviously became the guy who did House, so he did very well as well. So we've obviously got some really interesting people. Now, Benelton, who actually was the co-writer of it, is someone who also wrote another thing, which is another one I'm going to talk about. It's called Upstart Crow. Now, Upstart Crow is actually based on the idea of a comedy version of what happened to William Shakespeare. So that is something I will talk about in another few weeks. But that is very good as well. And there's also another series Ben Elton wrote, was called The Thin Blue Line, which is about a police force, which is basically a comedy, and that's Rowan Atkinson again. So Rowan Atkinson and Ben Elton seem to work really well together. And so my main thing about this is about what I think this teaches about is reincarnation. It teaches about how we also try and have a mission in what we do. Sometimes it's not successful. And then also the idea is sometimes about how circumstances lead us to where we are. So yeah, that's about Blackadder. If you've never seen it before, please see what you think. Any comments? If you have seen Blackadder, please tell me your thoughts about it. And you're very welcome. I will speak to you soon.